Okay, welcome everyone and to this special council meeting being held at the council chambers in Donnybrook, Wednesday the 25th of January at 3 p.m. Can I begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land, the Wadandi people of the Noongar Nation, paying my respects to elders past, present and emerging. I declare the meeting open and welcome the extensive public gallery of two at this stage, I'm pleased to have you join us. As with the formal advice, the meeting is being live streamed and recorded in accordance with Council Policy EMCP-2. Come in. The Commissioner, I meant to also further state that it is being live streamed and digitally recorded in accordance with Council policy, and members of the public are reminded that no other visual or audio recording of this meeting by any other means is allowed without permission of the chairperson. And whilst every endeavour has been made to only record those who are actively participating in the meeting, loud comments or noises from the gallery may be picked up in the recording. So I'll take it at that. In attendance is me, Gail McGowan, for those that don't know me, as the Commissioner, Ben Rose as the Chief Executive Officer, Kim Dolzadelli, Director Corporate and Community, Archana Arun, Admin Executive Officer Extraordinaire, I am told. And can I now acknowledge a couple of extra people in the gallery as well. I'll just forewarn you when we get to question time, and I think Shane and Lisa are familiar with this. I'm inviting you to sit up at the table here because you feel as though you're a little too far away from me, and from that stage, and I think it's a little less formal. In terms of apologies, I'm here, so there are no apologies, and we don't have any from the staff as well. Approved leave of absence, there is none. Application for leave of absence, there is none. I am, though, as is my wont, for item 3, just going to commence with a statement, because I've been trying to do this a little bit to give you a bit of a sense of me and how I operate. So it's the second special council meeting I've presided over since my appointment. So once again, I'm taking the opportunity to make a brief statement before we head to public question time. Before I actually begin the substantive comment, though, I've been advised by a couple of community members that they would have been here today. However, the timing of the meeting coincides with the funeral of a much-loved member of the Donnybrook community, and I think these occasions are always sad, but even more so when someone is in the prime of their life. So can I extend my sympathy to the family and loved ones of Sis Steele, and just may the love and support of your community hold you up over the days, months and years ahead, because I think it's a sad time. I'm also very conscious that the timing of this meeting just ahead of the Australia Day holiday is not ideal, but unfortunately it was the only time we could schedule it. And I'm particularly keen, one of the reasons was so that we could move some things from the that were dealt with before or the November meeting, but also program in the annual electors meeting, which we're hoping to set for the 7th of March, which is a Tuesday at 6 p.m. And I think in the hall, is it? Yes. Mm-hmm. I expect, and indeed I hope, there will be interest in that meeting, and I also hope there will be interest in the regular meetings of council. I'm also hoping that people will try and take the time tomorrow to support those who are becoming Australian citizens. I think we have 3 people at the ceremony here, so which is great, or being acknowledged for their service to the community. And I say, no matter what time, no matter what your views are on the Australia Day holiday, I think it's really important we join together to celebrate with those who are taking their oath or being recognised, and also use the day as a day of thanks and reflection for those whose volunteering efforts have supported the community over a trying few weeks. And I think nothing to me epitomises the notion of citizenship more than the camaraderie and support we've witnessed during the fires and in the aftermath of the fires. And I think, Shane, if I mentioned to you, I think last time you were here having evacuated, I hope you're safely back at home. Now, we're all on a bit of a learning curve in terms of operating with a commissioner rather than a full council, but so I continue to do my best to promote integrity and good governance in all that I do, and I will from time to time beg indulgence as I come to grips with the role, and I think you can all help keep me to account in that. I've now had the opportunity to meet with quite a number of individuals and groups and thank them for their interest in the future of the Shire. I've still got many more meetings ahead, but I'll summarise a couple of the key messages I've tried to consistently give so that everyone's getting much the same message or getting the same message. Firstly, I'm exploring options to maintain the principles of good governance and abide by the legislation while enabling input into the council process, given we're not operating with elected members. And my initial thinking around how best we might organise public question time to enable the broadest range of views to be presented is around, in my ideal world, I would rather not wait until an actual meeting to understand some of those views. So I'm very happy to have people either contact me or email things through. On ordinary council meeting dates, I would like to institute a register or something of that kind, so that those wishing to ask a question can flag for me at least the topic, if not the actual issue, and that way my intention would be to have a longer public question time but try and group the issues a little bit together so we can deal with them, and that hopefully will enable me to organise the order of questions a bit more efficiently. I'm also looking to establish some ground rules. While these are still being shaped up, I will have very low tolerance for attacks on individuals rather than a focus on the issues, and one value very close to my heart is that of tolerance and respect. And as I say, by all means raise concerns with me if there are substantive issues, but I'm not convinced that a public forum is the place to air those sorts of concerns. But that said, I appreciate and acknowledge some of the frustrations that have led to where we are today, so I hope that as part of that resetting process, the modified approach to question time will help. The second aspect is I'm quite happy to allow questions on behalf of an organisation, but I will need to be sufficiently persuaded that the individual seeking to ask the question has the authority to speak on behalf of the members of that organisation. And my understanding is that the reason people are seeking to use that mechanism is the stated fear of being sued as an individual, whereas you wouldn't be as as a representative. I certainly don't intend to take a litigious approach, and I'd make the observation that sticking to a focus on the issues rather than commenting on individuals or sort of the gotcha questions that have crept in will help us all avoid that. The third thing is my style is to be as open as I can be and to test and challenge views where I can. My sense is that the Shire Executive and staff overwhelmingly comprise people who are professional and dedicated to achieving the best outcomes for the Shire. And like the task I have before me over coming months, making those determinations is not easy, and there'll be people who disagree. What I want to do is try and provide as much background as I can for any of those decisions I make, but there'll be times when I'm not able to give as much detail as I might like for a range of reasons, including some of those issues of commercial confidentiality. But I will be trying my best to balance the various views to the best of my ability. And then the last thing, I note that in the agenda papers and minutes for today's paper, there are responses to some previously asked questions, notably those at the November meeting. And I am aware that many people are seeking more substantive detail, particularly on arrangements for the VC Mitchell development. And as I've said in some of my previous public commentary, I'm working through that in that detail at the moment, but I do want to provide a more detailed update in the next few weeks. So I'll now return to the substantive business of the meeting. So declarations of interest. I can say that under Division 6, Subdivision 1 of the Local Government Act 1995, I need to take care to ensure that a financial impartiality interest is declared, and I refrain from voting on any matter which is considered to come within the ambit of the Act. I certainly hope that doesn't happen, because we'll have a real problem if I end up having to conflict myself out of doing something. But I will also note there that I have completed my, what is it, the financial return or declaration of interest or whatever the return is called? Primary return, and that hopefully is, if it's not up on the website now, it should be fairly soon. I'll also, for those that are interested, declare that I have now received formal notification from Minister Carey in terms of the arrangements for my engagement here, and broadly speaking that comprises of an annual salary or a remuneration rather than a salary of $150,000 per annum prorated, plus an amount of $900 per week, which is to cover expenses which include vehicle and travel costs, accommodation and board lodgings, etc. So I'll just declare that for the record so that it puts to rest any of those comments. And now I won't forget public question time this time, but I haven't ordered you with so I'm sort of going to call number one from the pew virtually. So do I have anyone wishing to ask ask a question of us? Shane, please come up to here, and I know you're Shane McGuinness. Simon. Shane Sercombe, and Shane, please sit down and you will provide your address later because, as I think you've mentioned, it's live stream, so I remember that bit. Thank you, Shane.
Thank you, Commissioner. Can I please have your best observation of to date of what went wrong with the previous council?
Probably, technically, it's not within the ambit of this meeting, but I would, my observations to date is, and I think I've said this to a number of people I've met with, I don't see this council as being so broken that it can't be fixed. I think there was obviously a bit of a breakdown in trust and communication. I think there are a range of reasons for that. I'm probably not best placed to comment. I think it's the individuals, but I will place again on public record my thanks for the Shire President and the previous councillors, because I think they fulfilled their duties with good intent. There are a couple of things that I do observe, and I have observed a lot when I've been looking at other sort of breakdowns almost similar to this sort of situation, and you get into a bit of a cycle where the trust breaks down, the confidence breaks down, some shutters and barriers go up, which feeds that cycle of mistrust and concerns about transparency, etc. So I'm hoping that by taking a little bit of the emotion out and allowing everyone to step back and to really think about what they want for the future of this community, that we can reset and move forward.
Thank you. And I see it, and you've mentioned it as your primary role over the next 9 months is to get candidates to stick their hand up to ultimately replace you. What can we do to prevent a similar situation and to make the role more attractive to candidates, so we do get those candidates? And so what can we learn from what happened, and what can we do to improve that situation?
I'll probably have more to say on that as we go along, but I think there's a couple of things. As I've said again, a couple of times, it's a pretty thankless task, but it can also be an incredibly rewarding task. But I think we, and I'll say we in the collective sense because, I'm a member of a community and I'm a member of this community for a while, is that notion of being very respectful of the time and commitment people who choose to put their hand up for election, that they're willing to give, and they do it for the benefit of the community. And I think that's very evident, in terms of past elected members. I think we have to then be careful that having elected them, we put them in a position of trust to make decisions on our behalf, so we have to be a bit respectful of some of those decisions. So I think there's an element of sometimes when you don't like a decision, trying to understand it and respect it, and if you don't like it, then obviously the democratic process, as you do with any state or federal government, is there's a ballot box process in the future. I think at meetings themselves, that sense of having robust sort of discussion around issues and a contest of ideas and coming to what I hope is a common landing, but often you will get votes, etc. Probably sometimes, if I put it fairly bluntly, is sucking it up when the decision doesn't go your way and saying, well, maybe I didn't put the case persuasively enough, etc. So there are lots of different learnings, but the absolute message I would give is optimistically, I think it's a very recoverable position, but I think it does require people to be assured that they will be supported, not cut down, if they stand up to represent their community, and that, you know, relationships and trust probably trump a whole lot of other things.
Thank you. I've had my 2 questions, so I'll let someone else come up and I'll
Okay.
come back if I'm allowed.
Right. Come up, yes. Yeah. Yeah, just. That mic is on while the little red light's on.
So Sian Blackledge.
Yeah.
So mine are actually about the cheque runs, credit card runs. Kim knows on. So basically, in a prior audit, as a bit of background, there were risks identified about the transparency of credit card use in regards to the admin officers, and at the time the CEO reported that the risk had been mitigated. What has been put in place to ensure transparency and accuracy with the use of credit cards? Because I have got a couple of examples that I noticed that they're not always there. So that there was no credit card run in August or October, but we've got them for the last 2 months. So, and I had a second question around that.
I actually, because a couple of people have raised it, because I had to understand what people meant by cheque run, and a couple of people have raised it with me before. Thank you, Lisa. And that's the credit card statements, etc. My observation would be, obviously there are internal audit processes I will be going through as I'm responsible for, you know, for making those decisions. But my general observation on the level of detail that is in the financial statements, and which includes effectively the cheque runs of everything that's been paid, is unlike anything I've ever seen before. To the point I probably wouldn't necessarily agree that we need that much detail.
Oh no, yes, I wanted that much.
Yes, I know. Obviously, you wanted that much, but I think when I responded to Shane's question about we elect people, and one of their jobs is to monitor. I think we have to avoid micromanaging that as well, because I do think we need to be mindful of the work that people have to do to get on with, actually doing their jobs, both the elected members and the individuals. So, anything can be subject, and I certainly, I've had one meeting of the Audit and Risk Committee. I really enjoyed the opportunity to work with Ian Telfer and Vivian. I think that committee can help me, and if I have what I call substantiated, sort of concerns raised, I'm quite happy to look at it. But I think, there's part of me that says, let's just let people get on with their job. Yeah.
There's actually, what I'd like to see is some dates in that check run, mainly to just to ensure some accuracy in the future. Sounds a bit petty, but for example, the EFT 25469 is
Can't I remember it?
Yeah, I wrote it down for the Water Corp. It's actually for a Water Corporation, one for Venfarley Playground. Both lines have got the same dates and the same amount, so there's actually 2 line statements. Probably just a mistake there, but that's that's the thing. You don't know whether it's a mistake or we are paying the same amount twice.
I would probably, invite you then just to either give Kim or one of his team a ring and ask the question, if you want to. But I wouldn't say I'd support dates and things included, because I just think we're getting into too much detail, and that's there's an element of
Okay.
That we might have to agree to disagree on that one.
Yeah, we will.
Okay.
No worries.
Right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sean. Lisa, please. You can't ask one about the cheque run now, because I've tried to deal with it.
I know it's an old terminology, but it just makes sense when you look at the financial payments, etc. So yes, I have 3 questions, but I don't believe the first one's really a question. It's just regarding.
I'm not counting to that extent.
Okay, thank you, because it's just highlighting some information in the November minutes. I just. On page 12, what it's saying is that Councillor Massey left the room and then we voted en bloc. And I know that you can't because Councillor Massey had a proximity interest on a matter, but that was taken out of en bloc, and then, so it's just the order of where that's sitting. So if you look on page 12, it says that she left the chambers at 6:30, and then all the en bloc matters were voted, and her name is not there, and she actually did vote on those matters. She left the room after that, I think it would have been, and then the matter about the land claim came up, where she had a proximity of interest, and that's when she left the room. So it's just kind of, it just didn't kind of make sense.
Thanks, because that's useful, because one of the questions that Ben and Kim have got coming towards them at that, because I wasn't there, was are they comfortable with the accuracy of those minutes? So any of that sort of input is very
Very
helpful.
tricky for you because,
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
accepting minutes that you weren't a part of. So, yeah. So, you know, not a question, more a statement around that.
We can look at that and
Yep, sure.
check it.
Now, my question is in regard to...
Oh, okay, yes. Yeah.
Commissioner, if I may.
Yeah, sure.
Mrs. Arun has some advice on that item, on that matter, with previous Councillor Massey leaving the room.
Lisa. That was when Councillor Massey stepped out for the toilet break.
Oh, okay. And then she came back.
And then she came
but
back
she
and
never
then
had
she
a
left.
chance to vote on the en bloc items.
No, we voted without her because we thought that she left for her item.
We won't need to record in the minutes that Councillor Massey had a comfort break, I don't think, but thank you anyway.
Okay, so my question now then is regarding the VC Mitchell Park, and I'm wondering, Commissioner, if you would consider holding a public meeting in regard to finances, expenses, and the impact that it will have upon ratepayers as well. My question regarding that is because I have sat here in many, many meetings and there have been many, many questions raised around this particular project and people continuously seeking clarity around that. And my thought is, after I'd spoken to the department, that sometimes the presiding member may consider actually holding a public meeting regarding a particular topic that is a large focus on the community. And I see it that the VC Mitchell Park project certainly has attracted a lot of attention and people asking a lot of questions. So would you consider holding a public meeting in regard to that?
I won't say no, but I'll make a couple of comments. My comment before about saying I'll issue some more substantive, information is including a lot of, what I think hopefully will address some of those previous concerns. I think the electors' meeting is inevitably going to, on the 6th of March, inevitably going to be a little bit of that. At the moment, I'm not persuaded that a public meeting is actually going to advance my understanding or help me get, untangle some of those bits as quickly as just talking to some of the groups and a couple of other strategies I'm working through and talking through. And one of the reasons I say that is often, there's lots of moving parts with the project, as you well know. A public meeting's at a stage when some of those parts are still moving to that degree may not necessarily provide, I'll say it in a different way. Often you end up getting the extremes of the debate and you actually lose a bit of focus on the issues. So I'm trying to, and I've had briefings from Treasury Corporation, I've had briefings from the staff here, I've spoken to people. Next step is to meet with representatives of the various sporting clubs. That enables me to understand a bit more about it, but it's probably still a bit premature for me to say, yes, I'll do that, or no, I'll do this. But I've got a couple of things in mind, and that's what I've said over the next few weeks. I intend to sort of say how I think we might move that forward. Yeah.
And I guess my question is not so much about you gaining the understanding, but the community gaining the understanding, Commissioner?
Everything I'm trying to work towards is to help the community gain a better understanding. So to provide, so for instance, as one of those things, and I reported at the Audit and Risk, I can't remember whether you were there at that stage, that Treasury Corporation has, at my request, provided me with a sort of a scenario, for want of a better word, on current interest rates and repayments and cost of, the project, etc. So it's pulling together a whole lot of that information and where current costs have gone, where the gateways, for want of a better word, on the contract that's signed off in November, where they fit in. So just trying to actually provide that information back to the community in a more digestible form. But I think we're heading in the same direction. It's just whether a public meeting's the way to get there. Okay.
It sort of somewhat fits into my next question as well about the stakeholders. And by stakeholders, I'm talking about people who reside in the proximity of the venue or the proposed the location of it. So my question, so because as ratepayers, people are not aware of what's actually happening. There have been new people move into the area. They don't know that this is happening. When they bought their properties, they weren't told that this project was going to occur or how it may impact on them as well. So my next question is in regard to the new lights that have been installed at the football oval as well. I would make the assumption that those lights have been approved by the Shire. And I'm wondering about, in that approval from Shire, why it was that property owners were not consulted about those lights and asked for any kind of feedback around that. So in the past, when there's been something that's happened within those properties, like when the water tank got installed down there, got a letter to say this is what's happening. There was no consultation at all in regard to the new lights that were put up at VC Mitchell Park, and being summer and being the off season, nobody's experienced what it's going to be like for them there, but people just don't know that that's even happened. So I'm wondering why the stakeholders in the proximity of the area have not been contacted and asked for feedback around that.
I'll ask the CEO if he's got any update in a moment, but it's a useful point, because I think, again, from my experience in my past life in terms of Planning, Lands and Heritage Director General, that notion of the due diligence for the people who are moving into an area, just that constant reminder to people to actually check and, about any developments in the area, etc. So there is an element of, almost the buyer beware in that sense as well. But I agree with you that consulting with the communities affected is really important. So, CEO, do anything on the lights?
Thank you, Commissioner. I'll need to take some advice from our planning department as to what processes and regulations apply. I understand on a public reserve, a development application is not necessarily required, which is not to say that you don't have to do consultation, but the formal approval process is very different, as you probably know from your background. But I'd need to take that on notice and talk to our planning team.
Yeah, but point taken.
Oh, if I can just add, like, for example, at Hands Oval, and I know their lights are way bigger, but there are, like, once the game's finished and they've finished, those lights go off straight away. But I note that in Donnybrook, those lights stay on for quite a while after, they don't seem to have any hours of operation, and that's what I would like to be consulted on, if we can find a way forward so that the lights get switched off, not only to save power, but also for it to not be lighting up the kitchen of my house at all hours as well would be really helpful, because they are really bright.
And look, sometimes it is simply a matter of those things being drawn to attention of people. So that's where communication goes a long way. One of the things I would also add in terms of the VC Mitchell project is, and I haven't quite worked out the how yet, but certainly trying to bring either the steering committee or the groups back together again and just, sort of work through some of that information. But I take your point about the nearby residents as well, so thank you.
May I ask just one more question about those lights?
I'll be indulgent, yes.
Thank you for indulging me. I'm just wondering, the money that funded those lights, is that also part of the football club's contribution towards their $250,000 for that project?
I think I'd rather deal with that one as part of that overall. I don't know the answer, but I'll wrap that up as part of that, as well as to what's happening there.
Sorry,
Yeah, I know the 250, I know what you're talking, yeah, so.
Yeah, so that's taken on notice.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry,
yes,
is that been taken on
yes, you
notice?
can-
Is that
you
what
can
you're
take
saying?
that on notice,
Okay, thank you.
yes. Thank you. Simon? Okay.
Simon McInnes. At the September meeting, I asked the question, in the long-term financial plan, you state that over the first 6 years of the plan, the average expenditure reductions of 5.24%, or about $300,000 per annum, has been applied to renewal works within the Shire. I'm just concerned that this is going to be death by 1,000 cuts. If we don't maintain the buildings within the Shire, eventually they will become to a state where, and this is a policy, they can't be insured, which will make them unusable. And by reducing, there's already a $500,000 backlog in maintenance. I can't recall ever seeing a tender for any maintenance of the buildings. And now they're reducing it by another 3%, which will bring it up to about $750,000 behind in maintenance this year. And I've got the policy documents and everything here. I'm just concerned that things aren't being maintained within the Shire, and it's based on, where is it? Either the building's not required, it's uneconomical, a duplication of service, I can understand, or underutilised or redundant. But these halls and things like that are pretty serious places for the small communities and outlying hamlets within the Shire. So I'm just wondering about the policy of not maintaining the buildings.
I think I'll have to take that one on notice, in a sense, as a more substantive question. Yeah, no, by all means, but I would make, just a couple of points there. One of the things I had asked to do, but the fires got in the way,
Yep.
And so I put
And
priority
that's when the halls
there.
come into
yes,
their own.
absolutely. Was I'd asked Peter Davis or for someone to take me for a drive around, and I was going to physically look at all those facilities, because I think, again, an observation I'd make in relation to some of the comments around, the VC Mitchell Park, is we also need to appreciate the current state, of worthiness or otherwise of existing buildings and how many we've got. Now, I'm not making a judgment. I acknowledge absolutely that lots of those buildings around have value, and they certainly have value to the individuals, but I also know from having most recently sat in charge of the Office of State Heritage under the bailiwick of Planning, Lands and Heritage, that as a broader society we're facing some pretty critical decisions over the next couple of decades, because the actual money to go around to maintain a whole lot of places of value isn't necessarily going to go as far as we might like to. So some of those questions will have to be addressed. So that's a broad observation. I'm not saying let's go and not maintain them, but I think it's each community is going to have to face some of that question, because in a WA historical context, we've not ever had to cope with the idea of even ruins, almost, in a sense. So it's a really interesting point. But I'll take your broader question around the overall cost, if you can provide that to me, and I'll get back. If we've already answered you in substance from the September meeting, then I might have to, but I have made a commitment to everyone that I will actually have a bit of a look at some of those, burning issues and see if I can't look at a bit more information where I can.
Okay.
Okay?
And one more question. The RAMS, which is the road network,
Yep.
it was going to be done this year, I believe.
RAMS, because some people some shires publish their RAMS and
That's right.
others
I was
don't.
wondering if we could publish ours.
Yeah, look, it's available, and the question is whether and because I've asked the same question, and my understanding is that it's obviously made available to, I think, the Grants Commission and Main Roads and others. If it doesn't require an incredible amount of resourcing, it's a question I'm happy to continue to pursue, but equally I would invite anyone who wants to know of any rating of a particular road. I would see no reason, unless I'm going to be corrected in a moment, of why someone couldn't just ring and ask the question, or around a series of roads of their interest. So I'm not I'm not into publishing a whole lot of stuff, a bit the same as the response that I gave to Sian in terms of, you know, sometimes levels of detail, for the levels of detail's sake, you know, I need enough transparency for people to have comfort, but I think we elect a council, or in my case, I'm elected as a commissioner to sort of carry out certain functions. I have a responsibility there to act on behalf of, as the councillors do, so sometimes I'll bat you away.
Well, we all
Okay.
need a level of comfort, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, Tara. Any other questions? Okay, come on. But you know, we're not going to be here at midnight. It's all right. That's yes. No.
Possible. Thanks for the opportunity. I'm not trying to set you up on this one, but would you be able to give a high-level summary of our annual financial report, and maybe it might be passed on to admin, but yeah, a brief summary of what our financials look like for the year?
Look, and I'll probably ask Mr. Dolzadelli to give a bit more detail, but broadly speaking, the Audit and Risk Committee met last week to receive the financial statements and to receive the report of the Auditor General. I've mentioned before that that was an unqualified or clear audit. I think I better be careful that I don't paraphrase Ian Telfer as Chair of the Audit and Risk Committee, but I think one of the things we noted with some degree of support was how close the actual budget figures were to the estimates, etc., and the generally, you know, I think good health. My general observation is that the council is in quite a strong position. But Kim, I know we spend, even in this set of reports, the salaries is the big item, you know, often the big item, but there are lots of different components. But Kim, do you want to make a broad observation?
Thank you, Commissioner McGowan, and thanks for your question, Shane. Yeah, look, I did give a run through at the Audit and Risk Committee meeting to some degree at a high level, in another degree not at a high level. We finished the year with a confirmed surplus position of $1.831 million. The importance of that number is in the 22-23 budget, we estimate a number. And I'm happy to say that that number that we estimated was 1.822450. So it was about, we've got an extra 9,489. I might have turned an 8 and a 9 around there. To me, that's a very, very important factor in terms of what the annuals do tell us. I did go through some of the main variations at the Audit and Risk meeting, and there's a variance with respect to employee costs in terms of budget to actual, which is around about the 97, let's call it $100,000 mark, and that discrepancy or that variation is actually the movement in employee provisions, which isn't a cash impact on the budget at all, or sorry, on the statements for that matter, in terms of your end of year position. Other than that, there's probably not a lot that I would say, other than operating grants, stated budget of 2.4 million, actual 5.33, and that was due to a prepayment of the financial assistance grants, both general and road grants. That was 1.571 million, and we also had the Minning Up, one of the grants for the Minning Up and thank you, Langley Villas, a prepayment there. So basically that major variance was those numbers. If you take away those prepayment of grants, then the reality is your $1.831 million surplus, because when I see surpluses like that, I sort of go, hang on a minute, why are you charging me so many rates? You got this whopping surplus, okay? But if you take away those, then effectively we come down to around about the $240,000 surplus in real terms. Now, I'd rather see that than a deficit of 240. Some of that was due to not being able to actually undertake some operational activities due to the lack of availability of contractors. Some of that was also we had some, where was it? Yeah, there's just minor savings in different areas, which have helped us. We also had better performance up at the rec centre, certainly with the pool. So when you start adding up, you know, and considering 800 line items and there's $5,000 here, $1,000 here, it doesn't actually take much to get to that sort of a level. The good thing is that all and every dollar of that surplus at the end of June 30, 22 is utilised in the new budget, so it's not being shoveled off somewhere into a reserve or, you know, for a special project or anything of that nature. It's actually used as our starting point for the new year. So when we're trying to strike a rate or a rate increase that's going to impact on residents, you know, we've already considered and got that money, I guess, in the budget as a carried forward amount of funds that we are able to spend. Hopefully that answers your question, but if you do have further questions, Shane, I welcome you to send me an email.
And I think too, probably, I'm still coming to grips with some of these things, but the annual electors meeting is very much focused on questions around the annual report, which includes the financial statements as well. So I think from that point, that provides another opportunity for scrutiny. I think in the current year, one of the things you've observed too, Kim, I think, is that we'll be fairly well underspent on our capital at this stage, simply because of the, you know, timing and sequencing of some projects. So that's another issue coming up.
We will, and through you, Madam Commissioner, if I just may, and I know it's not about last year, it's about what we're looking at this year, but I'm sure people might be interested. Actually, I'd like to think they are. So we will be working on a budget review as at the end of January, with a view of presenting that to Council at the February meeting. So you'll get a much better picture as to where things are. I mean, I think the monthly financial statements, you know, they're in some pretty good detail. But just to mention a couple of things, you know, the interest rate rises, they impact loans and all those sorts of things that aren't locked in, and certainly any current loans that we have are locked. They aren't impacted by any of these RBA rate increases. But of course, we're investing money. So right now, we're probably ahead of the game in terms of investment income at least 60K. So when you know, I'll be surprised if we're not 100,000 up on interest return on money invested. So, you know, that's a good sign. We've also had a few reimbursements that we didn't expect, that aren't budgeted for, and they'll be tidied up through the budget review process as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Just one final question, and to try and correct the public record, I guess. Can the Commissioner confirm that a $3 million co-contribution is not required in order to receive the $6 million VC Mitchell grant?
I will repeat what I've said on a number of occasions. To my understanding and everything I am led to believe, there is no legal requirement for that, for there to be a $3 million or a co-contribution of any kind. However, that said, and certainly sitting where I previously was, because I was on the other side of the fence virtually handing out some of those grants, there is a very, very strong expectation there will be a co-contribution or skin in the game. And I think I've seen, you know, a lot of to and froing around whether a comment that without the, you know, the 3 million there wouldn't be a 6 million. That's not, you know, it may not be legally absolutely right, but it's not incorrect either, because effectively to get you far enough up the pecking order to be considered for a grant, you would have been expected to put in a co-contribution. That's, you know, but there's a very clear difference between an expectation or a sort of a practice, a long-standing practice, and a legal requirement. That's what I've been trying to make clear.
Yeah, I guess my concern was that the council decisions were based on misleading information on the that was a statutory requirement in order to receive the $6 million. Yeah, it's while it's may not be here or there, it actually has a huge impact on councillors' decision making. Is my concern, but
Look, you know, and again, I'm not privy to a lot of that, but I would also make the comment that from what I've gone back and looked at, the decision to contribute the 3 million was made by a properly constituted council on a proper, you know, on a proper vote, etc. So whatever other conversations, I don't know, but according to the records that I've seen. But anyway, I'll take that on.
yeah, I guess when council are making the decision and given misleading information is where the issue occurs.
I'm
but
not
thank
sure
you.
that I can sort of accept that there was misleading, because I wasn't there to
Yeah.
see it, and nothing I have seen suggests that there was misleading information.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Shane. Any other comments, or we'll move on? So thank you. Welcome, Shane. Okay, I have to find my place now. This is trying to operate with 95 screens. Okay, we have item 6. We have no petitions, we have no presentations, and we have no deputations. So we shall now move to the confirmation of the minutes. So apart from toilet breaks accepted, item 7.1, the special meeting of council on 16th of November 2022. We're actually I'm being asked that the minutes from the special meeting of council held on 16th of November 2022 be confirmed as a true and accurate record. As I wasn't there, I must admit I have listened to the recordings, etc. But I will ask both Ben as the CEO and Kim as the. Oh no, you weren't. No, you weren't there either. So Ben, to the best of your knowledge, are they a true and correct record?
They are, Commissioner. And if you do have any question mark, you can review the audio recording.
No, as I say, I have no reason to suggest they're not, but I think it would be it's prudent for me to ask you. So I shall. Now, how do I do it? I actually I carry the motion, and yeah, I don't have to move it and second it. I just carry it, don't I? I think we worked out last time. So yeah, so I agree with myself on this one. Okay, thank you. All right, the next one is the next meeting, and that is the meeting of the ordinary meeting of council held on the 23rd of November be confirmed as a true and accurate record. And for the record, I will ask you again, Ben, that do you have any reason that they wouldn't be confirmed as a true and correct record?
Thank you, Commissioner. I do not. Mr. Dolzardelli was at that meeting also, so he...
Oh, well, you might have...
No, he wasn't.
Okay.
He wasn't at that meeting, actually, sorry.
Okay, all right. Well, in that case, I will again carry that motion and confirm that the minutes. Special council meeting of the 11th of January be confirmed as a true and correct record. I was at that meeting. I think I even remember it. So that was the meeting where I had to carry a motion to appoint myself as a member of the Audit and Risk Committee to allow us to have an Audit and Risk Committee, and we did that. So that was, I accept that as a true and correct record, so we carry that motion as well. Thank you. Right, now the local emergency, item 8.1, the local emergency management committee meeting. We have minutes of the meeting of the 29th of November attached, and I'm being asked to receive and endorse the minutes. Before I do so, and I have looked at those, and I'll ask the same question, but I think probably appropriate to note at this point, as I glanced through or went through them and looked at the number of organisations represented around the table and the business around what risks, that they foresaw in the future. I don't think any of us could have imagined what was going to come over the next few weeks. So for anyone involved in any way in local emergency management in this shire, can I extend my thanks. But on that note, any reason that they shouldn't be accepted as a true and correct?
Madam
You
Commissioner,
were, yes.
I was not at that meeting. The committee minutes, we're not being asked to declare
We just
received
received it.
them.
All right, I carry that we received them then. Thank you for that. Then our reports of officers, we have no report from the Director of Operations, the Director of Corporate and Community, the accounts for payment. The schedule of accounts paid under delegated authority is presented for public information, and that's at item 9.2.1 bracket 1, and that's the one I think I commented on the extensive nature of them. So I will note, we note that they're for information. The monthly financial report for November 22 is at 9.2.2 bracket 1 there, and I am being asked to receive that. Mr. Dolzardelli, is there anything I have gone through there? But again, I don't notice, I didn't have anything specific, but are there any high level or issues by exception you wish to advise?
No, I think we've probably mentioned the main points, and that's the confirmation of carried forward balance through the audit process, the expectation and proof in the pudding already in terms of additional interest earnings, and the fact that there will be sections of the capital works program that will not be completed within the financial year.
Okay, thank you. Well, we will receive the monthly financial report for November. Same again for December, the schedule of payments at 9.2.3, and that's presented for public information, so I note that. 9.2.4, the monthly financial report for December 2022, and that be received as well. Again, anything by exception there? I think we've covered it. Okay. So 9.2.5, the annual financial statements and audit opinion 2021-22. I'm being asked to receive the annual financial report, audit report, financial management letter and interim audit management letter for the year ending 30th of June 2022, and note the report on significant findings in accordance with section 7.12 capital A bracket 4 small b of the Local Government Act 1995 for the year ending 30th of June 2022 is not required, and that is not required, as I understand it, because there are no significant issues, no significant findings. As I say, I will take it as read rather than repeat that we had the meeting of the Audit and Risk Committee last week, and that committee resolved to recommend that we receive the annual financial report, and we note that we don't need the report, and that was a carried 3-0. So I'm going to take that as being carried as well, unless there are any comments. No? Okay, thank you. Then 9.2.6, 2021-22 annual report. The annual report for the year ending 30th of June 2022 is attached in the papers. I'm not sure who is that. Oh, that's you, Mr. Dolzardelli. Is it? I mean, I have now gone through it. I can't say I have absorbed every last detail, but the annual electors meeting is actually the scrutiny point for that one as well, as I understand it. So is there anything you need to draw attention to?
No.
Okay, well, we'll accept that. 9.2.7, the annual general meeting of electors. So again, we have, 56 days since, from the acceptance of the minimum of 56 days. And so probably by provenance of Commissioner McGowan, I have identified Tuesday the 7th of March at 6 p.m. as probably one of the best days that I'm available, that we can actually have the AGM of electors in the town hall. And I'm being asked to instruct the Chief Executive Officer to undertake all statutory advertising. I will, at this point, given we only have a few people in the audience, but can anyone think of anything obvious? It's a bit like, forever hold your peace in the marriage vows, but is there any reason that date is... Yeah, okay, good. We are going with that date. No one else has identified anything, but that just means I'll be available if anyone wants to do an International Women's Day function the next day. So take it as an invitation. Okay, so I shall consider that recommendation carried. Now I think we move to Chief Executive Officer. You have nothing to... Yes, at 9.3. Elected member motions of which previous notice has been given, nil. New business of an urgent nature introduced by decision of the meeting, nil. Meetings closed to the public. Now I will go into a closed meeting to deal with these last two items. However, I will just preface that by saying the items are the Southampton Road, Bailing Up Road and Path upgrade, which is an outcome of a tender, and I am proposing to agree to a recommendation around the award of that tender. For the record, I think there were three tenderers, a substantial difference in costs between the preferred tenderer and others, and I see no reason why that wouldn't be dealt with. The delegated, then item 12.1.2, Sherp Minnunup Road, and I think it's also the Langley Villas as well. Sherp stands for Social Housing Economic Recovery Program, which is a series of grants that was made available through Department of Communities or Minister for Housing around refurbishments and upgrades to social housing, and we were successful in getting something like 2.9 million or thereabouts, and that a tender has been awarded under delegated authority, I think, in that sense anyway, so I intend to support that. Now, what do we do? Because we closed, do we then come back for anyone that wants to come back for me to read any resolutions? Yes, so, yeah. Thank you all, other than that. Thank you, and thank you for attending. Okay, thanks, Sean. Okay, thanks. Thanks, Sean. And thank you to those watching. I didn't think.
You can say that to when you close the meeting.
Sorry?
We'll go back to when
Oh,
live
okay,
feed,
perfect.
when we come out of the
Wonderful.
motions.
wished you a long weekend. Oh, oh. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, out of curiosity, oh no, I won't, yeah, so I don't read this one though.
No, just the second.
Okay. Right, well, thank you. We have, I've declared the meeting open again. Item 12.2.2, the Shirt Midnight Cottages Delegated Tender Award. And it's been resolved that, or carried that the council authorise the Chief Executive Officer to 1.1, award the tender on the merit of the evaluation report content and recommendation, and 1.2, ensure that the award aligns to the grant funding guidelines and budget allocations, and 1.3, provide an update for the community and stakeholders of the successful award via all the usual media and correspondence outlets, and 2, release this resolution in the meeting minutes. So we shall do that. And we also express, or I also express thanks, as did the CEO, to the officers involved in both the tender processes and procurement for the diligence applied for both 12.2.1 and 12.2.2 on the agenda. So in doing that, I think we can move to closure of the meeting and thank those in attendance, both physically here today and anyone who spent their afternoon watching on live stream. So thank you to those. I will advise that the next ordinary meeting of council will be held on Wednesday, the 22nd of February 2023, commencing at 5 p.m. in the Shire of Donnybrook, Balingup Council Chambers. I'll also just flag that there won't at this stage be an agenda, what do you call it? The agenda briefing session, sorry, I was going to say agenda setting. And it's unlikely that they will proceed because there is, those agenda briefing sessions are to answer questions of councillors. It's probably not a productive use of people's time with only a commissioner in process, but we're still working that through, but our understanding is that is the most sensible course of action. So with that, I declare the meeting closed at 4:04 p.m. So thank you all.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you. There is about a 15-second or 30-second delay before the